Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I'll be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night, and actually for the last 6 nights, we've been talking about the Declaration of Independence. Basically, we've been deconstructing that amazing document, more than 200 years old now, and it reminded me in going through the Declaration of Independence for you and for me, frankly. It's amazing how, whenever we look at history, it's always the older civilizations that are more advanced. The newer civilizations, we just seem to be getting stupider and stupider. But 200 years ago, our fathers and mothers were very highly educated, very intelligent people. Even 100 years ago, farmers out in Ottumwa, Iowa had the equivalent education of a PhD today. Very intelligent people, very aware of reality. And I note, and as have many other expats that I've encountered over the last couple of years, we note that the farther away we get from English-speaking countries, the United States, Great Britain, Canada, um, Australia, New Zealand, the farther away we get from countries where the native language is English, the more human people become. The more well-read people are, the more intelligent people are. And it's one of these things that never occurred to me. Frankly, in the last 40 years, most of this stuff never occurred to me. It just kept happening to the point where I couldn't avoid noticing it. But that gets us to our topic tonight. I thought about our fathers and mothers 200 years ago, trying to give you and I a gift that we have just spit on and not even bothered to throw into the trash. We just sort of stomped it into the ground like garbage, which is freedom and knowledge, wisdom. We've just turned our backs on our fathers and mothers, and frankly, we're getting what we deserve now. We have our masters whose only power over us is hatred. They're parasites, our masters. They cannot survive without us. But I thought about our fathers and our mothers 200 years ago. And then I look at the people here in Europe who are very far away from the English language. And I discovered that there is good in this world. And that's our little chat for this evening. There is good in the world. There really is. I see it every single day here in Europe. And inexplicably, I actually find it occasionally back in New Zealand, where for 3 years I had the most horrifying experience of my life. I'll be 53 years old next month. And oh, by the way, the real date today is July 25th, 2011. And I again apologize for being so late on all these video episodes, but in my extreme arrogance, I actually believed that what I was talking about was important and that I would have cash contributors by now. And of course, I had one lovely lady in the great state of Wisconsin helping me out for a while, but that's gone. And so I dated these video episodes what I thought would be in chronological order and be able to follow through. But of course, now I'm 2 months behind because of lack of money, to be very blunt about it. So I apologize for the fact that today's actually July 25th, 2011, and not April 29th, 2011, as it says on the video file. But in the 3 years that I was in New Zealand, after being conned by a very good advertising campaign, which is worldwide, and has fooled so many, many, many good people, high-end professionals. Go to New Zealand. We're looking to the future. We're friendly. We need you. We want you. We want to build our country up. And then getting there and discovering that that was all lies. I did, however, discover there were a lot of very good people in New Zealand. I was one of the few foreigners who actually had any New Zealand friends at all, and I had quite a few. Also had a lot of foreign friends, which was never my intention in moving to New Zealand. In fact, when I moved to New Zealand, I wanted to be a New Zealander. So I avoided foreigners completely, which was a mistake because of the truth of the situation there. But occasionally I will get a phone call or an email from a New Zealander who's actually trying to still help me after all these years and all of the horrors that their country heaped on me. And as I said, I find a lot of good here in Europe. There are a lot of good people here in Europe, many, many more than I have ever met before. And there's still good people in the United States. I have several very good friends who still help me whenever they can, within their ability. And that's where I discovered you really need three things to succeed in business or in, I guess this is business, this certainly isn't life. You really need three things in business to survive. First, you need a plan. Second, you need the right people in the right place. And third, you need some operating capital. You need some cash in your pocket. You need $100 to make $1,000, basically. That's the ratio. And I've also since discovered that there is good in the world. There are good people in the world, but because of the way we've evolved, the way we've been programmed, I'm not quite sure why. It has to be programming now that I think about it. You cannot ask of a person more than they're capable of giving. And that's where the 1, 2, 3 rule comes from. Have a plan, have the people in place, but they have to be the right people. And then 3, have a little cash in your pocket to be able to pay things like the phone bill, the internet bill, post, whatever you need to move paperwork around. In my case, move paperwork around the world. But you cannot have the wrong people in place. Because if you have the wrong people in place in this trilogy, this 1, 2, 3 plan, nothing's going to get done, or at the very least it's going to cost you more money. For example, you have somebody on the other side of the world and they have to sign a contract for you. And yet for some reason they can't do it. They just cannot bring themselves to put their signature on that contract for you. Well, what's going to happen? Well, they have to send that piece of paper to the other side of the world for you, which is going to cost you a lot of money, just so you can sign it and send it back. So it's going to cost you $100 to make $1,000, simply because you have the wrong person in that place. The plan can work, but it's going to cost you more money than if you had the right person in the right place at the right time. This is basic business. But it also talks about the power of 3. 3 is a sacred number, at least to my people, and it's sort of hard to explain. But despite all of this, there is good in the world. There is. I had strangers here in Europe when I finally was able to talk about what was going on and not having enough food to eat, and occasionally being homeless, where a very kind lady here in Europe, as we were parting company, and she had bought me a coffee, it was very sweet of her, and she looked at me and says, "Charlie, you need to find a better class of friends." And she stuffed a few €100 into my pocket and said, "Here, you probably will need this more than I do. Don't worry, I get paid next Tuesday." And I started to cry, so I did something that's not appropriate here. I gave her a big hug because I didn't want to embarrass her even more by watching me break down in tears for her kindness. And when she said that to me, "Charlie, you need to find a better class of friend," this is when I realized that all of the friends I've had over the years back in the States, they were my friends because I did everything for them and never asked them for anything in return. I felt then that it was important to help anybody who needed my help, and I never thought to ask anything in return. I then realized when this very lovely lady says, "Charlie, you need to find a better class of friends." I then looked back on my time on this world, and I looked back and I said, she's obviously very right. And I remember this little old lady I knew back in Hollywood. I was always helping this poor little old lady because she was basically, she was stupid, was what she was, and arrogant and mean. But because she was a little old lady, I had this comic book version of little old ladies in my head. You help little old ladies across the street and all that. The fact that the little old lady carried a revolver in her pocket and would very happily take a 2x4 and beat you over the head with it when you weren't looking. That never occurred to me until later. I think in the 11 years that I know this little old lady and helped her at every conceivable opportunity where she needed me, I think I asked for her help maybe 3, 4 times in that 11 years. And her answer to me every single time was always the same. It is not convenient for me to assist you at this time. And I thought, how stupid could I possibly be? And I kept helping this little old lady until the last time she let me down. It pretty much, in my point of view, she'd left me out to die. And so I just stopped even talking to her. And I wonder how I ever got to that point where I felt that it was important to help people even though they treated me like dirt. And it really does get that back to programming. We're conditioned as Americans, as U.S. citizens, to believe in a series of fantasies. And the fantasies that I grew up with, that if people were left to their own devices, if people were not influenced in any way by outside forces, our masters, or even if they were, they would still choose good over evil. They'd choose love over hatred. They'd choose compassion over cruelty. And I really believe that. And the second great fantasy of my existence was that love was the single most important thing in the world. Nothing was more important than having love. And over the years and the decades, I was proved wrong over and over and over and over again. And sometimes it hurt for years, and sometimes it hurt for months, and eventually just hurt for days, and then eventually got to the point of, okay. And so the greatest lessons that I've learned so far, I had to learn the very hardest way possible. I had to learn in a way that I would never forget. And going to New Zealand, I was forever cured of the belief that people were basically good. They're not. When given a choice, people will choose hatred over love. They'll choose cruelty over kindness. I learned that without question in New Zealand, and I will never make that mistake again. When I first got to Europe, I actually met my soulmate and her girlfriend, her lover, and the three of us, the power of three as it were, we were supposed to be together forever. We were supposed to have children together and raise grandchildren together. And she hated me for it. And she tortured me in ways I never believed possible. My soul, literally every night, my soul was raped out of my body. And so I was therefore cured of the second great fantasy of my life, that love is the single most important thing. I will tell you from personal experience, if you ever do meet your soulmate, turn and run for your life. Just run. Because there are 7 billion people on this planet. She's not the only one for you. Trust me. If a woman hurts you, you know what? There's a couple billion more out there. Just walk away. Let it go. Because it isn't true that there is only one love possible in your life. It just isn't true. Just walk away. So I've learned a lot in these last 4 years when I left the States. I knew a lot in the States, but I've learned things since that I never even considered. But there is good in the world. There really is. Here in Europe, there is revolutions on a daily basis against our masters. And our masters are having a terrible time holding control here. Because the farther you get away from English-speaking countries, as I say, the more human people are. And they are just people. Not necessarily good, not necessarily bad. But the chances are much better for you that you'll find good people the farther you get away from the English language. My problem, of course, is I'm American, so I only speak two languages, English and bad English. But I'm trying. But there is good in the world. You need to find it. You need to get up and walk away and look for it. It is possible to survive what's coming. And what's coming is a multitude of things. We've got a dead brown dwarf star with 3 planets of its own, passing between us and the sun. That's going to flip us end for end. Around that dead brown dwarf star is a lot of cometary debris that's falling into our atmosphere even as we speak. One piece of rock hitting the South Pole, you're either looking at a wave 5,000 feet tall moving at the speed of sound circumnavigating the Earth, or you're looking at a catastrophic meltdown of the polar ice sheet. Now bear in mind that the ice at the South Pole is thousands of feet thick, thousands of feet tall, and the ice sheet itself is physically bigger than North America and Europe combined. If even half of that ice melts and flows into the ocean, the sea is going to rise at least 150 feet. If all of it melts, it'll rise 300 feet, which means that every coastal city in the world will disappear. Sadly, most of our major agricultural areas will also be flooded. Those are only the highlights. I mean, there are other things our masters have planned for us. They want to have the War of Armageddon in the Middle East to prove their black satanic Bible is true, to bring back their God to earth. They want to use their harp weapon to sacrifice all life on earth, to burn us all alive. 7 billion souls burned in the glory of their God, their devil, or Satan. And again, it doesn't matter if you believe in God. It doesn't matter if you believe in Satan. Our masters do. So what you and I believe is immaterial. Thankfully, there are forces working against our masters that we don't know anything about, both on this world and it appears to be outside of our world, because lately there have been spirals over the northern pole where it looks to me like they're using their harp weapon and they're shooting up into the sky, into space. And the only reason you'd be shooting up into space is you're shooting at somebody. Who that might be, haven't a clue. But if you and I have lived on this world for 2.5 billion years, and every 32,000 years the Earth flips end for end, and if our older brothers and sisters who were born before you and I came along realized that the universe is electrical, realized they could build ships and move to a better neighborhood, and left the world behind, maybe it's our older brothers and sisters coming back to check on us. Maybe they don't like our masters any more than we do. Maybe that's who our masters are shooting at. I don't know. But every 32,000 years, for 2.5 billion years, this Earth has flipped end for end. Somebody must have figured it out and left by now. And maybe it's like children coming home after they've been away for a number of years and deciding and remembering what home was. Maybe they're coming back. Maybe they're going to help us out. Don't know. I don't think we should count on it. I think we should stand up and make decisions for ourselves. But there is good in the world. I've seen it. It's just that we actually have to make the effort to stand together. And if we can't say no, then we have to make the decision simply to turn our backs and walk away. It's up to you. It's your decision. Nobody can make this decision for you. An ancient blessing, an ancient act of love, a hope and a dream for a friend, or just for a beloved stranger, I share with you. May you live as long as you wish. May you love as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel fighting his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race. Their black magic captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.